Hi, Greg. How you doing?
What's up, Hugh? Surprise video again, I see.
Yeah. Who's that behind you? DeLorean?
Yeah, same picture we had last time. I still have it up from last time.
Biden there, he started up his campaign again because he gave all the kids free money,
Hmm.
and he's bankrupting the colleges and the people that lent them money. But they don't tell you about that.
Yeah, also, so are these just I mean they're big banks, right? So I mean are they now in danger of collapsing the country because he did this, or
No, but I'm sure it'll be harder to get a student loan in the future. Biden's going around the country saying, let's not live in the past. Let's look to the future. That's his big campaign speech now. But I want to look to
yeah.
I want to look to the past and get justice for all the dead kids in my life that all three political parties murdered. I would like to see justice for the Kennedy family and all those kids they murdered in my life, hiding my truth at Kennedy. I'd also like to expose the people who have been hiding the real truth of Kennedy. What do you think about that?
I think everybody is accepting these hypnotic suggestions, if you will, from people like Biden saying don't consider anything in the past. I was just trying to talk on YouTube on another video, or not really talk, but just type, trying to just get somebody's attention to consider just a small little piece of reality that they're just not even, and just like always, they just completely ignore anything to do with reality. People are in just that trance. You just can't break through the bubble to even get them just to even look at reality.
They're all in some kind of, I think so many of them are on drugs.
Right.
And they live to, get high and drunk and have fun. And nothing that has to do with reality interests any of them at all. They aren't taught
Yeah, now see, that's supposed to be a Christian group too, right? But and they talk about how they're seeking truth. They really want to know the reality, and they always say that. But man, you can't. You throw them any reality, they don't even look at it, much less consider it.
I've run into two 30-year-old people who don't even know who the Kennedy family are.
Didn't you tell me they were from another country, though?
No,
I give them a little bit of break.
They're living right here in the United States.
Somebody else told you that today? Well, see, that's rough. I mean, if you went to high school and you still don't even know who like the Kennedys are, that's pretty bad. Now, I'll admit,
people don't know simple like things like who's James Hoffa. I had a person ask me. I had a person ask me what's CBS. An American. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, they don't even watch. They don't watch news. They just talk about blinders. I mean, that's like a tiny little bubble these people live in.
Everybody's not like that, but I'm noticing this about the younger generation nowadays.
Especially them, yeah.
They don't know anything about current events.
Current, past, nothing. All they know are singers, maybe some of their favorite actors. That's just about it.
I haven't heard any singers. Have you actually heard a singer lately?
No, I don't listen to music.
I hear a lot of
just
people,
for the sake of listening to music.
I hear a lot of people rapping.
And no, that's definitely not music either, right?
I hear a lot of people screaming, but as far as a singer, I haven't heard a singer in years.
It's not very many. I mean, there's Bowe, there's Josh Groban, people like that have a little bit of class. I can we do occasionally listen to them in the car, but that's about that's literally about it.
What do you think about the church paying for LGBTQ rights now? I sent you an email about that.
No, I know, I saw it. Here in in our town, we have a Unitarian church, and I one time it's got a lot of history in it, so I wanted to go learn about the history of the church, kind of look around to see the stuff.
What does Unitarian mean?
That's Ralph Waldo Emerson's denomination. And also one of your ancestors was in it with Ralph Waldo Emerson. Was Sarah Fuller was part of that too. Yeah, transcendentalist, universalist
I've
stuff.
never been to a Unitarian church, so I don't even know what it is. Is that like, do they believe in aliens and UFOs or?
No, well, they got the rainbow flags all over, and you know, they tell you that they're there pretty much to push a Democrat
There's nobody.
agenda.
There's nobody in my family that I'm aware of that was ever gay.
Right. So where do they get this stuff?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
No.
The Bible.
It gets worse and worse.
The Bible says that's an abomination.
You know, even when I was a kid, the Methodists, which there's hardly any Methodists left, but my grandparents were Methodists, so we went to a lot of Methodist churches with them. And
I was married in a Methodist church.
right.
The preacher there, he bragged about, I was entertaining 6,000 people in Tennessee at Kinzer State Park playing guitar and singing.
Yeah.
And he asked me to come to church, and I said, sure, because I owned a ministry and I was raised to be a priest, but I was playing like 60s, 70s rock and roll music in a park, entertaining everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, they wouldn't even let women preachers back then, was my point.
Well, he bragged to the church about how he found me playing rock and roll music in the park and how he saved me.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then
so
he died of Parkinson's disease about 2 years later. But he actually married me and my wife. And I went to that Methodist church. But when my wives died, they didn't help me. When my wives were dismembered and murdered, nobody there even cared.
Yeah, they're in that same little trance. Reality never affects them in any way, just like everyone else.
Well, they all used
like
to
my video I made earlier today.
My wife was in a wheelchair with muscular dystrophy when she was dismembered and murdered. They slit her throat after cutting her ears off, and they actually sodomized her in her wheelchair. Two guys sodomized her.
And even that didn't get their attention. That's some serious blinders.
No, nothing gets anybody's attention unless it happens to them.
Right.
And then I lived right next door to Alex Jones, who owned a newspaper in that town for over 5 years. And he didn't even give my wife an obituary.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor.
So because of him, they put InfoWars out there.
And then, I was a Detroit News paper boy all my life until I bought my first car and got a job teaching.
Right.
I delivered the Detroit News and Scripps, I think it was called Scripps Broadcasting. They actually stole my trademark and put it on the front page of the Detroit News for a couple of years.
Hey, just like Time Magazine here behind me.
Yeah, Bottomline, my trademark. And they put it right on the front page of Detroit News. And I'd already been on the radio and I was in all the club papers. I was in the Chicago Tribune and the Detroit News. They just walk up and steal my trademark with the WWF back then. And then they murdered me. And I worked for these people all my life from the time I was like 5 years old until
now, which murder are we talking about then? Because they've tried to murder you I don't know, dozen or more times.
I couldn't eat anywhere in town. They kept poisoning me. And then my wife, I was married young because my wife raped me, Nancy. And she stabbed me with a butcher knife and pushed me down a flight of stairs. And that's at that point I divorced her. I didn't divorce her when I walked in on her cheating on me because we had kids together. And then my next wife, they had done the same thing when I was in the process of divorcing Nancy. I was about 16 years old, and the Cook family, who is Apple Computers, married my brother-in-law and have been going to bed with me. And the Cook family did that so they could spy on me, because I'm the family that gave Gates the software to make his first computer, Joe Jacobs.
Mhm.
And 3 women from Apple Computers in the Westhouse family were having sex with me before I turned 16.
Hmm.
Perry, Cook, and then the woman I married, her mother.
It seems like I
Oh,
read some news about Perry lately too, and I can't think of what it was.
yeah, they're in everything. Well, when they murdered my wife Victoria in her wheelchair, they gave the world the Perrys, didn't give my wife an obituary, and her ears were missing and her throat slit Halloween Eve. And she had a state police guard from North Carolina. And they killed him
Yeah.
right in front of the police. And the police looked the other way. And I was hundreds of miles away, and they tried to blame me for her murder. And I went to 2 police stations 30 days prior, after I revived her and found her dead, and flew her to the hospital. And I went to 2 police stations, and all the police in 2 police stations used fake names and badge numbers, and never checked in on my murdered wife. So she was actually murdered twice. And the second time, she had retired state policemen from Senator Graham's state all around her.
What was the name of that hospital? They should be famous for this.
Johnson City Hospital. And then I started talking to people in the area. My caretaker, Mr. Tweed, and the Tweed family, that's Dolly Parton's cousins. Glenn Tweed, his mother was murdered in the same hospital. Then I talked to the jeweler in town, and his mother was murdered in the same hospital. And I'll look right at you and they'll tell you, they murdered my mother. They murdered my mother. And I know 10 people in that area. That hospital murdered their wives, their mothers, their sons. And they'll all say, well, there's nothing you can do about it. And I don't believe that. And if any one of them had done something about it prior to them murdering my wife wouldn't have been murdered. They would have straightened that problem out years ago.
I suspect since nobody did, they're still doing it.
Yeah, that's Johnson City, Tennessee. They actually murdered my attorney on his way to file murder charges at the district attorney's office on the same day they cut my wife's ears off and slit her throat. Halloween Eve. They murdered Jim Ballman at the same time. And they wrote up my wife missing her ears, a dismembered body. They said it was natural causes.
Right.
And
right,
if
right.
there's anybody out there that can explain to me how a woman with muscular dystrophy in a wheelchair could naturally lose her ears laying in a hospital bed, I'd like to hear the story.
Now you mentioned Perry a minute ago, and I had to Google it to remind myself of the story. But here he is, a close Trump ally. GOP Representative Scott Perry sues for return of phone data seized by federal investigators.
Yeah, everybody in Trump's life is a criminal out of my past.
Yeah,
Stone cut the bone out of my feet.
and that's who was making the comment today in the news to Joe Biden about not looking at the past, was Stone.
Yeah, it's real funny how, and then the guy that helped Trump get in the White House, Biden listens to him and repeats the same thing. So just that tells you they're working together.
Right.
And all 3 political parties have murdered little kids all around me my entire life for 60
So how
years.
can we in good conscience, Hugh, vote for either one of these 2 parties,
I
Trump
can't.
or Biden, or when they're all working with the same people?
I can no longer vote for any of them until I see
No, there's no way. I can't do it anymore.
until I see a new face. I'm not going to vote for either party anymore. And the Independent Party, he never runs.
I'll see. I'd like to vote for somebody like DeSantis, but I'm going to probably learn more about him and find out he's in the same. I mean, there's another one of the Bush's states, the third Bush brother down there. He used to run that state. I'll bet anything that he's connected to them.
Anybody down in Florida, I'm not going to vote for. That's
Yeah.
Bob Graham and those people were murdering kids up in Michigan, all the way down to Florida when I was a kid. I won't vote for any of them. The Graham family, Peter Graham, Bob Graham, Lindsey Graham, Billy Graham, they've been murdering kids where I was born in Oakland County my entire life, and they got away with it.
A lot of people won't like hearing you say Billy Graham. Mixed
I
with
don't
that,
care.
but I understand that
I don't
how it
care.
works here.
The Graham, I owned Baker College at birth, and you know I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
It's on Hugh Street. I'm Hugh. And they built Baker College on property I owned at birth. My family owned that property. That when they killed John F. Kennedy, they closed down Fitzgerald High School and they built Hazel Park High School on Hugh Street. I'm Hugh. And I'm the
Well, I see that there's a con there just because Billy Graham's daughter married Jim Baker. I think it's his daughter.
Yeah, no. These people covered up the murder of my twin, and I and my twin were kidnapped with the Sirhan family. We were 4 years old. They beat my twin to death, chained to a post next to me.
Yeah.
And these were the families of governors, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
And then these are the same families that murdered the Kennedy family. And I don't think it, I know it. They kidnapped me with a Sirhan kid. We were all 4. And that was 11 years before they framed Sirhan for Bobby's murder. 11 years, Greg. And then 7 years after they kidnapped me and murdered my twin with Sirhan's kid, they told the world Oswald murdered JFK. And then my business partner, Jack Ruby, I rented the carousel from the carousel trademark. That was Jack Ruby's trademark. I rented a factory from the carousel. He walked up and he shot Oswald because they didn't want you knowing the truth. And this has been a cover up. And then they murdered my wives while I lived on the Manning Ranch, and Manning created the Warren Archives. This is one great big cover up in my life, you know. So I'm never going to stop talking about it. I had people try to tell me that I better shut up today, and I just ignored them.
Yeah. I know. Well, you get that every day. You get these people doing this
told me that today, a woman and a guy, and I just ignore them. I don't even answer them.
Right.
I'm not gonna shut up. The government has murdered my entire family 5 times. There's no way anyone's gonna get me to shut up.
Right.
I'm gonna say the truth until the day I die.
Are they you suppose they're government or bikers?
Both. The government hires bikers.
Right. That's evident with somebody like Trump. Yeah.
They hire doctors, they hire nurses. They had to hire Barbara Walters' family. They used the Walters family phone to scream Slater as they cut my wife's throat. In my ear, I was 100 miles away at home. They called me on my wife's advocate's phone in the hospital and screamed in a heavy metal voice, Slater, as they murdered my wife.
Right. And they're covering up her name right now, Walters, in a TV series on Disney. They made the She-Hulk, that's Walters, and that's her character's name.
Walters. Toy Story, I got the Manning Ranch from Woody. That's Toy Story.
Right.
Buzzy was my sponsor in the Catholic Church. That's the astronaut, Buzz.
Yeah.
In Walt Disney. They surrounded me with the Disney characters from the time of my birth. Mickey was my older brother. I'm Huey. You have baby Huey. My birthday's on the love bug, Herbie.
Yeah, so I was thinking,
1953.
53.
That's not coincidence. I went to church, the Methodist church with the Disney family.
Right. Well, I come up across that number 53 even before I knew you. I was starting to see it all the time and collecting 53s.
Yeah, well, I'm
and now I know why they did it.
Yeah, well, Hollywood marked me because my family made the first TV series on Earth, Make Room for Daddy. Then you got St. Jude's for Children. And that was my family, the Gardner family. And then the Gardner family is the Baker family. And you have people
Just the
like
very fact that I knew they
you
were
have
doing,
you
I knew
had
they were using
people
that
like
number
Judith.
before I knew you was amazing.
You had people like Judith Laurie Baker marry into my family,
Yeah.
and then she takes the Baker name, and then they framed her when she was uh, dating a guy behind her husband's back.
Right. It's
You
like
know,
Graham married Baker.
that's why it's bad to cheat on your spouse, because you're just setting yourself up for disaster. Other people see you doing it, and it's real easy for them to hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, people don't understand that, and people don't even care in today's world.
So just a few stories like in 53 that I collected here. $53 billion crack in the financial market, 53 deaths in Oregon, active shooter incidents up 53%. It
Yeah,
just goes on and on and on. They just put this
yeah, and
all
then
over.
Intel followed me here because Bill Gates is my cousin. The Gates family, Gardner is their mother, and I'm the
Yeah,
Gardner family.
right.
At my wedding to Joe Jacobs' daughter, Joe Jacobs handed Gates the software to interface the DOS with the TV screen. And the
Yeah.
guy that did that was my friend, Neil Cronin, I believe it was his name. And then Floyd was with us, and you got Pink Floyd. We built the Georgia Guidestones. I was with Paul Allen, Gates' partner in Washington. And I know all these people all the way back in the 60s before anybody had a computer. The internet didn't exist.
Now, the Gates family that you grew up with, that didn't include Bill Gates, right? That was just his relatives, I think,
Well, Bill
wasn't it?
Gates was in Washington. The Gates family lived in Michigan with me.
Yeah.
Danny
Yeah.
Gates taught me how to shoot a shotgun. Gary Gates, and they lived with the Willis family.
Yeah.
And you got Bruce Willis from the Willis family.
Yeah.
And then Russians took over Hollywood. The government made all the stars. When they murdered Hoffa, they gave you Dustin Hoffman from Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
They gave you Sylvester Stallone, Sylvester Stall one, and that was a direct insult to me because I was on the radio, had an album on the radio. They give you Sylvester Stallone's first movie, and then they pull me off the TV and radio, give you Sylvester Stallone from Ukraine with Ed Asner, and they pulled me off the radio and TV. I was on the front page of all the entertainment magazines, and they did this as they murdered Kennedy. And Kennedy was talking right to me. Him and his brothers were working with me in sessions of Congress to change the Berne Convention. So I have a whole different view than most people. And because they pulled me off of everything, they stole my trademark worldwide. 264 countries. They used my name and trademark and told you who I am. So nobody knows who I am. And this was all done on purpose because I'm the truth of JFK's murder. And the 5 governors that kidnapped me and murdered my twin with Sirhan's child, these are the governors who really murdered Kennedy. And I'm not going to say anymore. I could go on and on about that. Everybody believes a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming from Oswald and Ruby and Judith Baker's parents worked with my family.
Yeah.
At Chrysler, you know that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into that. I'm the truth of Kennedy's murder. All of them.
Right. Yeah, I know it.
5 Kennedys were murdered. And then they kidnapped my daughter when she was 7 with a member of the Kennedy family. And they were going to kill her. They had her locked up in an earth mover. And that's when Alex Jones gave everybody chalk drawings from my family, Gardner and Cook. I was married to the Cook and Perry family, which is Apple Computers. and they had raped me when I was 15 or 16, Cook
Yeah.
and Perry. And then the woman I married, Louise Florence, I had divorced Mr. Westhouse, and I married Mr. Westhouse's daughter. So before I was 18 years old, I had three women from Apple Computers having sex with me. And my own father told me that I should file rape charges. I just never did. I didn't take my father's advice. Now, as an old man, I wish I would have took my father's advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the world would be a different place if you had.
Jimmy Hoff would probably still be alive because Apple Computer, that family, set Hoff up and murdered him.
Right.
And I don't think it, I know it.
Yeah.
The Cook family that was raping me and the Florence family was with Jimmy Hoffa as he disappeared. And then that family, they tried to murder me twice after Hoffa was buried.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a Dr. Pasternak, who gave me 3 pills in my food that don't mix. And that came from that family, Apple Computers, Cook, Perry, Westhouse.
Mhm.
And then the Westhouse, who was a state policeman, pulled a shotgun out on me. I went to pick up my children who were at his house, and he pulled a shotgun out at 10 o'clock at night and was going to shoot me. And he knew I was his son-in-law. He had no reason to do that. The only reason he did that is because I was standing on top of the hole he buried Hoffa in. And he had stolen my horse. When Pasternak tried to kill me, and Springsteel was singing about Pasternak and my stolen trademark in New York, that's when he tried to kill me. And he's the one that set me up with Dr. Pasternak trying to poison me with pills. And I had a murder case in Royal Oak, Beaumont. 3 doctors there saved my life. Beaumont Hospital lost the records, and L. Brooks Patterson conveniently lost a murder case. And this is because he was outside the house where they murdered the kids in Oakland County. And they tell you they had Oakland County murders in the 70s. Well, gee, they murdered my twin in 57. They don't tell you about that.
No.
And that's because Senator Graham covers that up with Barr and O'Brien. And Barr and O'Brien were my neighbors. Dr. O'Brien was my friend. And they don't tell you.
I find it amazing that there's people in your life that the government promotes their story, but then if you try to find the real person, you can't find anything about some of these people.
You can't
Because
find
they
anything
covered it to
about
that
me.
degree, and they'll even be like that person's spouse or something. You know what I mean?
Greg, you can't find anything about me. And talk right behind you. Just say hi.
What is it?
The bottom line behind you, John DeLorean. That's my trademark. I created the word bottom line.
Right.
Weiner and Associates stole it. I hired Weiner and Associates in front of Dire Straits' house. They stole it, and DuPont took it with 2,500 corporations all on the same day.
Right. See, now that's a perfect example. Because here, okay, they never
And
see
Barr,
you.
And Barr and Dr. O'Brien and Graham. I own Baker College. I don't exist, but everybody.
But there it is, right there on time. But they never tell you. Right.
Right. And then he's on there because I stopped an illegal CIA and gun trade on a farm I bought from Trump's tax attorney, Mr. Mazar. But they don't tell anybody any of this. And they buried me. I've been buried. I'm coming up, I'm 70 years old. They've buried my entire life for 70 years. And I went to church with the Disney family. I published Disney, but I don't exist. And there's my stolen trademark on Time magazine behind you.
Right. I have found it so amazing how the media works like this, like without mentioning names. You know, it's in South Bend, Indiana. You know, one person we've already mentioned here today, and then you can, oh, the gay candidate that tries to become president is also from there. That's not a coincidence, you know.
Yeah. Hold on one moment.
Yeah, so that's that's like Peter Buttgig from South Bend, and they even make a parody of the name because they think it's so freaking hilarious.
No, they completely pretend I don't exist. And the FBI detained me for Hoffa's murder.
And then other
I was
people with the
talking,
same name as the people we were talking about a minute ago, they make the rainbow flag, and it's unreal. Then you find out, oh, they were in the FBI all the way back to Lincoln's time. You're like, oh my gosh, how far back does this go?
that's my family
I mean,
surrounding me.
before the FBI even existed as it is now.
You know, Gardner, Baker, Harris, Clara Harris was his guest. That's my family, Gardner, Baker, and Harris.
Yeah.
But I don't exist. And
Lord.
then I'm related to all the kings in Europe because of my uncle Admiral Byrd.
Yeah.
Every president gets elected, they pretend I don't exist and they run to London to the Queen. Tell me that
Yep.
makes sense.
No, they should.
I'm the Queen's cousin living right here in America, and they all deny I exist.
This next video I'm going to make you when I get a chance to get to the museum. Man, it's going to go along with this stuff. What you just said there, it's going to go along with that really well. But I don't want to spoil it.
No, don't mention it here. But I'm glad you got a job working in a museum. You
Well,
should,
it's volunteer. It's just something I enjoy doing. But
my book will be done, and you wrote my biography, and you know that my family founded Ohio.
yeah. Oh, we're
But
going to
I
mention that.
but I don't exist.
It's right there in the museum.
Well, every chance I get, I'll buy 100 books, and you can pass them out to the people that come on your tours.
Yeah.
My truth needs to be told because I'm the real history of the country. And Clinton, Biden, Obama, Trump, Bush, all the way back to when they murdered the Kennedys. Every president has hidden me after murdering the Kennedy family, and I'm part of the Kennedy family.
Yeah.
And I'm on all the US money. Jackson is my great 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 grandfather. And I lived with Michael Jackson's family.
So many names, it's hard to study them all.
Yeah, Ike Turner would change the tires on my semi that I drove with the Jackson family.
So you mentioned Jack and Pike in the past. I need to try to connect those names to the other names in your family and see where they connect.
Oh, Chase is my family. Morgan, Hamilton. Everybody on American money is related to me. But the government pretends I don't exist as they murdered my entire family 5 times.
You went to school with Hamilton and Chase and Lincoln also.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my family were caretakers at Ford's, who's laying off 6% of their workers today.
Jeez.
But we're not in a recession.
Right.
And California is going to stop making gasoline cars now.
No, I'm kind of glad about that. I somewhat tongue in cheek said,
No,
you
shouldn't be because it costs a lot more smoke and coal to make electricity. And California can't provide its customers with electricity now.
oh, they
So-
don't even have water. But
Well,
I was joking. They were not even
listen,
going to be able to leave the
listen.
state here.
No, you need to listen. If California switches over to electric cars, they can't even charge them, Greg. They can't provide electricity to the people in California now. They're always
Yeah.
having rolling blackouts.
Yeah, already. Right. Now they're going to put a bigger drain on their electric grid.
Well, how is anybody going to get anywhere in California if they all have electric cars? They can't charge.
Yeah. At least they're not. That's
And
what.
they have
That's
no
what.
way
That's
of-
what my joke was. At least they're not going to be able to leave.
They have no way of
here.
fixing that problem. And that problem's going to get worse because every generation there's more people. This entire thing is just it's pure stupidity.
Is it incompetence, or are they planning this to
No,
just?
it's very big incompetence because they can't charge the cars they have there now.
All
They
right.
always have rolling blackouts. So how you live in Los Angeles and you buy an electric car and your electricity goes out? How are you going to get to work?
Right.
And they have 25 million people at a time without electricity. And I
Yeah.
don't think it.
So
I know it.
no, I know. I'm aware of it.
I live here.
Yeah.
I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah.
No electricity. There's
What are they going to drink for water? It's drying up. They're not going to have electricity or water. What the?
Well, is it drying up or is it going to go underwater? They tell you both sides of the story. One
Yeah.
day they'll tell you that
Yeah.
there's no water and everything's drying up. The next day they tell you there's going to be a flood and 30 million people are going to die in it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. And our news reporting in this country is terrible. They don't report news. If they reported news, why do I have 4 dismembered, murdered wives and none of them even got an obituary? Why 2 years ago, I was sitting in Elbrooks Patterson's office when he was alive and they murdered 3 of my kids while I sat in his office. None of it was in the paper. There's no reporting in this country. The only thing they do is they have elections and then they make these stories up about Trump and Biden and Clinton stealing emails and stealing documents. And then they forever take over the media
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no real news ever gets reported.
Right.
And I can tell you that Clinton and Bush and Trump and Biden, they murdered my whole family 5 times so they can be in the White House. And I've been saying this for years.
Yeah.
And they just ignore me because they can't deny that. Look at the picture behind you. I grew up with John DeLorean. There's my stolen trademark on Time magazine. Bottomline busted. As I stop an illegal CIA gun and drug trade. And I'm in everything like that. Only they never mentioned me. They gave you Huey Lewis in the news and Billy Squire and a communist
Right.
Pope took my middle name Francis, and I don't exist.
Right. Right.
And they deny I exist.
Right.
So I'm never going to stop talking. I have no justice for dozens of murdered kids. Nobody went to jail. And I've had kids thrown on my properties dead, raped and dead my entire life. My wives have been dismembered and murdered in my home and in hospitals, dismembered and murdered and raped in hospitals. Not even an obituary. And then Apple Computer family covers it up in their media with Alex Jones and Julian Assange and Snowden. Snowden was the biggest lie this country ever knew. The FBI wasn't making the back doors, China was. And as soon as I said that in a video, then Donald Trump exposed Hugh, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they never give me credit for anything because I don't exist. And they
Right.
don't
And then they decided to bring the chip
don't
companies
want
here.
the entire lawyers bar stole my trademark to study to pass the bar exam. And that includes Garland and Barr and every attorney in the country, all the Supreme Court justices, every circuit court judge, they all studied out of my stolen trademark for 55 years to pass the bar exam. And none of them will admit that.
Right.
I'm going to do and say my truth until I die. And they try to kill me all the time. I don't care. I already put up enough videos and you wrote my biography. I don't care. I'm going to say my truth until the day I die.
I want to show them
our government blew up the Twin Towers. Our government did that, not bin Laden, not the Middle East. America, Israel, Germany, France, and London blew up the Twin Towers.
Here it is.
Yeah, that's my stolen trademark being used by the entire lawyers bar. And it used to be a great big booklet online, but as soon as I said it, they disappeared the booklet.
Yeah. So how are you going to get justice in any kind of a court if all the lawyers
Move over
use
to the
trademark?
side. Move over to the side.
All right.
And see, that's law, practice, management, and technology. Bottom line. That's my stolen trademark. Weiner and Associates did that. And gee, who was Weiner? He was a guy married to Aberdeen in Clinton's White House. And he had stolen my trademark all the way back in 65. He
Yeah.
was exposing himself to little kids online.
Yeah.
Remember?
Or yeah.
Weiner. Yeah. As they murdered my twin, torturing and raping us.
Yeah. There you go. Same group,
And
same
then
people.
Biden, he wants to just forget about all of that in the past, but they're killing kids. And these are American kids dumped on my properties. When President Ford took office, they killed Timmy King. President Ford's real name is Mr. King. It's not Ford.
Right.
President Ford is King and Gardner. I'm the King and Gardner families. I'm the Baker family. And I don't exist. And I created that word bottom line. And they used it all over the globe and murdered me. Forever trying to murder me. They couldn't murder me, but they murdered all my wives and kids. It's just disgusting who our government is nowadays.
Yeah.
And there's Giorgio Tsoukalos giving me a hug. And these people won't tell my story. They're too busy telling you about aliens and UFOs at S4. And I was kidnapped at S4 and my family built S4. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. There's well, that's not a great picture. Bottomline bar.
No, they put them up all over the world. There's a Bottomline bar in Vietnam, London, China. I was in 264 countries. They stole my federal license backed by the military. They stole it in every country on earth. The American government did that.
Bottomline in Detroit News.
Yeah. And that was their front page, bottom line every day. They stole that trademark from me, Greg,
Right.
before you were born. And then I know the artist, like Stone. I sat in the front row as he screamed out, "Who killed the Kennedys?" After all, it was me and Hugh. He said my name. And my union signed his contract so he could do the Steel Wheels concert. He goes back to London and the Queen knighted him for singing that song and nobody complained. And then he married one of the families that raped me and murdered my twin, the Hall family.
That picture at the bottom of it, but it cuts it off. It says Hollywood's obsession with the bottom line.
Yeah, that's my trademark. And I don't.
Yeah.
The only thing that exists in Hollywood are Ukrainian actors that they hired after they stole my trademark and buried me.
Yeah. It's just all over the internet, honey.
It's everywhere. And
Yeah.
I created the word. And when I created the word, it didn't exist in the dictionary.
Bottom line are comics.
Yeah, there's comics now. And you know, Mr. Schultz is one of the people that raped me in Osborne's basement. And he gave you Peanuts and Linus, Charlie Brown, remember?
Yeah.
Dr. Schultz. And gee, I went to Dr. Warner Elementary. And
See if that's-
Warner is still in the news today, but I don't exist. And there's Bottomline Incorporated behind you. 2,500 corporations stole my trademark with DuPont. And DuPont my family owned the patents on milk trucks, vans, and buses, and DuPont was supplying the paint to paint them. Claire Cummins worked with my father. They cut my father's hands off, kidnapped me, stole the patents. And then by the time I turned 14, they stole Bottomline from me. And I was a federal publisher, 28,000 worldwide publishing contracts in 264 countries.
Yeah.
$2 trillion, just my federal publishing license. That's what it was worth. In the top group on Billboard for 10 years, I was their publisher. And they stole all that from me. To give you Jesse Ventura, Julian Assange, the pedo from, where was he from? Sweden or someplace?
Yeah, I think Sweden sounds right.
Yeah. See, they divided me up and murdered me over and over and over to hide the theft.
Yeah.
And nobody knows it because I was being played on the radio in Detroit. We were playing in Chicago, Detroit, and Canada on the radio. And just like that, they removed everything as they killed the Kennedy.
That's the new NBC show called Bottomline now.
Yeah. Well, they're walking all over me, Greg. And there's nothing I can do. If I hire an attorney, they murder the attorney. If I hire a judge, they murder the judge. And I can't even find an attorney who hasn't studied out of my stolen trademark. I can't even have a fair trial anywhere on earth. You realize that?
I know. I mentioned that.
There's my band in 1960s.
That's the original Bottomline band.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not even the original. That's got Tony de Blasio.
Oh, right.
When de Blasio died, a Russian man took his name, and Tony was born in Brooklyn, New York. He went into a Brooklyn court and changed his name to de Blasio and became mayor of New York after they blew up the towers. And Americans blew up the towers. America, Israel, Germany, France, and Britain blew up the towers. Then they had your generation go and murder 2 million, 20 million Iraqi people.
Here's Steve Austin saying the bottom line.
Yeah, that's my trademark, and they stole it. That's where Westhouse worked at the Austin Company, and he tried to murder me twice after he buried Jimmy Hoffa. My family member, Jimmy Hoffa, was buried on the Westhouse property under a horse he stole from me. Then the FBI came and tried to tell me I did it. The very next day, they came to me and told me I did it because Louise Westhouse had a friend named Whitey who sold me a car, and I drove the car half a block down the street. The transmission fell out of it. I junked it. So they told me I buried Hoffa in that car. And the truth was, Louise delivered them to her ex-husband, who was a state policeman, and he already had a hole dug for him.
Yeah. That one's a mistake. That one ain't the right one.
But how are you doing, Greg?
Oh, not bad. Here's the let's see. Which one is that? 562.
We've said these things so many times. I keep repeating them all the time because eventually it'll sink into somebody that matters.
Here's another one. There you go. There's the bottom line bar in New York.
Yeah, that's where they sang about Pasternak. Bruce Springsteen sings about Joe DiMaggio and Pasternak. As Pasternak attempted to murder me in Michigan. And that's
How many musicians got their start there?
my stolen trademark.
Yeah.
All of them got their start at the Bottomline in London and in New York. All the rock
Unbelievable.
artists. That's where they got their start. My club, and I was the publisher, and they stole my publishing license. They even stole my name and my IRS licenses. And nobody in the country gives a damn. Barr doesn't care. Garland doesn't care. They scream Slater over the phone, and Slater is the attorney general in Tennessee where they slit two of my wives' throats.
Yeah.
And that's Tony in his lounge. We made that much money. See, that's all money on the wall behind you, Greg. But I don't exist. That's the kind of money
Right.
they stole from me, and stole my trademark, stole the patents on the Chevy van, the buses, the milk trucks. We made Fuller transmissions for semis, the Fuller family. And you know, Mrs. Fuller, that's my grandmother. Then you had the
Yeah.
Fuller brush man, and her daughter was Gardner. Gardner married Frank Sinatra and Mickey Rooney. This is the kind of money they stole from me before I was even an adult. They murdered me 3 times before I turned 17.
Yeah.
And they were raping me when I was 4. Men and women, the families of governors.
Yep.
Governor Long, Governor Wallace, Governor Osborne, and I can go on. Charles Schultz's family. He gave you Peanuts and Linus and Charlie Brown. And there's no lie in this. But I don't exist, and I'm not newsworthy, Greg. And they kidnapped me on the day they murdered Admiral Byrd. And I don't think they murdered him. My mother was a nurse, and she was his family. And she told me he was murdered. They told
Here's
you,
your
yeah. My
in case
trademark.
anybody doubts that that's your real trademark, there's your official trademark registration with the government for Bottomline, 1967.
Yeah. And they stole all that. That was $2 trillion of theft. Steve Austin, DuPont, Claire Cummins,
Yeah.
Milky the Clown is Claire Cummins. And there they are. They stole all that from me as they murdered me. They murdered my twin. They kidnapped me with the Sirhan kid. And they murdered the Kennedys. And this was all about hiding. Just my publishing license was $2 trillion in theft. And they stole the patents on milk trucks, vans, and buses from me. And Fuller transmissions. There's a Fuller transmission in every semi on earth back then.
Yeah.
That's the kind of money they stole from me. As they murdered me at 4 with my twin. I escaped, and L. Brooks Patterson covered all this up with Osborne, Long, Wallace, Darrell Hall, the Eagles. My first wife, who was dismembered and murdered, Nancy Lavoie. As they murdered Lavoie Finicum, they murdered Nancy Lavoie. They cut her leg off. And then they murdered her when they let the Bundys out of jail. She was my first wife, Greg. Her father was mayor of East Detroit. Then her stepfather was Joe Jacobs of IBM. I married her because she raped me. She got pregnant. She wanted to get an abortion. I told her no. I married her.
Yeah.
And then the Perry family and the Cook family started raping me, just like she had done, because of Gates. And I was teaching electronics in Warren, Michigan at 14, and they kept raping me. I had a 55-year-old woman rape me when I was 14 from Apple Computer, so they could spy on me, Greg. You hearing what
Yep.
I'm telling you?
Yeah, yeah.
And all of it's truth. By the time I was 15, they'd already used my trademark bottom line all over the globe. They stole it from me. Scripps Broadcasting, then DuPont, then they made all the Red Garter clubs. Kitty, that family that played Kitty, and Matt Dillon, the Red Garter clubs, they turned them all into bottom line clubs. And this was theft from me via Weiner and Associates in New York, Aberdeen, the Clintons, the Bush family. And then they murdered my wife, Terry Heath. Terry Heath was President Reagan's role model at Head Start. She helped develop the Head Start program for little kids. She was running a CPS office, and 2 off-duty policemen kidnapped her out of her CPS office and killed her.
Yeah.
She escaped and called me on the phone. She says, Hugh, you're the only guy on earth I trust. Help me. I bought her the Manning Ranch because Woody came to me, and that's Toy Story from Disney. Gave me a good deal on the Manning Civil War ranch, the Battle of Blue Springs, and Terry had been married to the only living Civil War soldier on earth, running her CPS office, protecting little kids. 2 off-duty policemen kidnapped her after they murdered her son. She had a son. They took her daughter from her, murdered her son, took her daughter from her. Then they kidnapped her out of her CPS office, take her from the Great Lakes in Wisconsin to Iowa. She escaped them in Iowa, asked me for help. I bought the Manning Civil War Ranch and put her on it. Then they followed her there and murdered her. She was there 6 months, they murdered her.
Yeah.
5 minutes before she was murdered, she told me 2 people were stalking her. It was the same 2 cops that kidnapped her out of her CPS office, and I don't think it, I know it. And once again, no obituary, nothing. And they murdered her twice. I found her dad, revived her, and then they murdered her 35 days later. Same thing they did to Victoria on the same ranch.
Yeah, I was trying to find the stock the stock certificate, but I can't seem to find where I put it. Where they stole $1.5 million stock from you too.
Oh, Rooney and Company, yeah. You know, Baker Hughes Oil Company. Baker, I'm Hugh. Baker's my family. That's my great grandmother and grandfather. And yeah, they gave me worthless penny stock and took my good stock. My own family did that.
That's what I was looking for, but I can't find where I
My
put it,
half
but that's
brother
all
and
right.
2 of my mother's sisters. That's the last thing my mother told me before she was murdered. She said she knew what my brother and her sisters did to me when they stole my inheritance. And she told me she was going to leave me hers. And then she was dead 2 hours later.
Yeah. And the last person with her was your brother, so that's
One of my
suspicious in and of
brothers.
itself.
One of my brothers, yeah. And my little sisters, they cover for them and say they were there too, but that's a lie. They weren't. I was talking to my mother alone on the front porch at midnight, and she went in to go to bed, and there was nobody there but her and I and my brother.
Yeah.
So she probably told my brother she wanted to leave me her inheritance, and she never got to do that. She was dead before Monday came around.
Right.
And
It's
that's just
unbelievable.
like Rusty. Rusty Hawthorne called me and told me he killed Brian Baldwin and that I was next. And he changed his name to Rusty Killen. And then you got Alec Baldwin at Hulu. And Hugh, I'm Hugh. And Lou is Lou Westhouse, Apple Computers, who was with Hoffa when he disappeared. And they have been raping me since I was 14. They did that so they could murder Hoffa. Because Hoffa was my family member.
You've been surrounding you and your family for
They
generations.
didn't want Apple to have anything to do with their computer business. You know, he was trying to get $10 an hour for everybody that worked in the Teamsters Union. They killed him. They
Yeah.
didn't want to pay that. And that's the same thing Kennedy was trying to do, get $10 an hour. Ted Kennedy, Senator Kennedy. And they play Hoffa and Kennedy off, and I'm cousin to both of them. And
Allergies are getting me today.
they both wanted the very same thing, but in the news, they play them off like they're enemies. It's all BS, Greg.
Right. Yeah.
Propaganda and lies. Just like Steve Austin with my stolen trademark, and the guy who really killed Jimmy Hoffa worked at the Austin Company, Austin Steel Company in Texas. And I'm, you know, you wrote my book, and I make these videos all the time, and you know I name names. Nobody sues me. They're all
Right.
afraid. They're all afraid of me. Clinton and Biden and Trump and Reagan, Bush. I'm telling the truth. Bush blew up the Twin Towers in the Pentagon. His father's friends did that. My civil rights case was in the Pentagon. They blew it up in the Pentagon. It was against the family that built the Pentagon. My receipts to Bottomline worldwide, my stolen IRS licenses were in the Twin Towers. My FBI reports about Hoffa and Apple and Gates were in Building 7. And my cousin, he invented nuclear thermite to build the underground military bases. And that was already built into the Twin Towers the day they built them, to bring it down in its own footprint. That's part of if you build a skyscraper over 10, 12 stories in New York, you have to have a way to bring it down in its own footprint. The nuclear thermite was put in the building as it was built. They didn't tell you that part, did they?
No.
I
No, they want to
mentioned
make you think that terrorists
I mentioned
dragged
that
it up there.
I mentioned that to one of Alex Jones' reporters, and he told me, "Oh, we already knew that." But why didn't they ever say it?
Right.
You know. And then Alex Jones, he kidnapped my daughter. Him and Cooper kidnapped my daughter and stole my family's chalk drawings, the Gardner Cook chalk drawing. Gardner and Cook are my relatives.
And that one I should have.
Cook is Apple Computers. Cook and Perry are cousins at Apple via the Westhouse family. And that family was raping me when I was 14.
That picture I have. Let's see, the Gardner picture. Willie Gardner's picture. There you go.
Yeah,
Well, that's not a good one. I think I have a better one.
yeah, from the Central Scotland News Agency. And that's a chalk drawing. And that drawing was taken from my family as they kidnapped my daughter with one of Kennedy's kids. They were both 7 years old. They raped my daughter.
Well, there's the stock picture I was looking for a second ago.
Yeah, Southeastern Michigan Gas. They gave me that penny stock and took my stock that my grandfather left me. They forged my name on it, lied to me. My own family did that. My stepbrother and two of my mother's sisters did that to me. And my mother knew it. My mother knew what her father left to me. She left that inheritance, the majority of it from the Harris family, to me. And her sisters and my stepbrother stole it from me by lying to me and forging my name. And then they took a little portion of my inheritance and they gave everybody in my family, and they gave like 50 kids 10 grand out of my inheritance. And that's not how wills work. My grandfather left me the inheritance, and my mother's sister and my stepbrother stole it all from me. And they kept the majority of it. They bought houses and cars and live a real nice life. And they gave me that worthless penny stock, 300 shares worth about $5,000.
Better. That's the best one I think I got at the moment, but
If you
I have
move,
another one
if
somewhere.
you move over to your left, I think you can see the Gardner name on that chalk drawing.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Willie Gardner there. W. Gardner.
Yeah, and I knew Willie. Willie was my friend. And Cook was my music teacher, and Cook rented a house from me where the CIA was running an illegal gun and drug trade for people like Bob Graham in the Senate.
Yeah.
We can let this go here. And I'm Scottish. I'm related to the Scottish king and queen, and the London king and queen, and the Denmark king and queen. I'm related to all of them. And anybody can check that. All you got to do is walk into any library and look up Admiral Byrd's heritage. And I'm his family. At my murdered wife's, when her ear was cut off and her throat slit Halloween Eve, the Byrd family left me a letter at her bedside the second time she was murdered. And my cousin in Radford at Radford University, he piloted the Enterprise during the Vietnam War. And you know, Greg, there's no lie in this.
Say again.
My cousin piloted the Enterprise in Vietnam War.
Yeah.
With Huey helicopters. And all of that is because of my family member, Admiral Byrd. Oh, you got my letter.
Yeah, it was signed Bird at the bottom, but it just cuts it off.
Yeah, and that Victoria is my wife who had muscular dystrophy. They sodomized her, cut her ears off, and slit her throat Halloween Eve. And they murdered her like that twice.
Yeah.
35 days time, they murdered her twice. And they did the same thing to Terry Heath.
Yeah.
As,
that's a letter from Bird to you while she was in the hospital.
As the world met Sarah Heath Palin, they murdered my fiance, Terry Heath.
Yeah.
And John McCain, he was marking my brother. My brother, John McCain, was on the Enterprise that my cousin piloted.
Yeah.
He probably flew Huey helicopters.
Yeah.
He was shot down and became a prisoner of war. When he come back here, he became a senator, and he was marking my brother Mike, who had a Congressional Medal of Honor. My brother Mike, they gave him stationery off the presidential plane. He could write any president on their own stationery because he had a Congressional Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
But I don't exist. My other brother ran Fort Knox. He taught people how to drive tanks. And then I taught electronics to the Abrams tank plant.
I find it interesting that Knox is related to your ancestors too.
Yeah, and
the Revolutionary.
We're
not related, but with your ancestors.
I'm aware of all. I'm aware of all of that, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll put that in the video too, if I remember.
My mother's family is the history of the country, and they all deny I exist. My mother went out to dinner with the Queen as I went out to dinner with Margaret Thatcher, and they were 10-course white glove dinners served by the military in Canada.
Right.
You understand this, Greg?
Yeah.
I took my wife Victoria there. They were trying to get me to move Bottomline to Canada before they stole it and put it in London.
And they just did it anyway. So they would have stole it either way, probably. Or maybe just made money off of it.
They just wanted one of the founders' kids in London.
Okay, yeah. That
so
makes
they
sense.
could walk all over me there in the news. In London and Israel, and America blew up the towers. It was never the Middle East. And they had your generation go and murder all those innocent women and kids in Baghdad. They carpetbagged Baghdad, and then they went there and they murdered all those Muslims. And because you're a Christian soldier, you thought you were doing the right thing. And that's how they use you Christians. And then, King James is my cousin. I'm related to all the kings. He authored the Bible. My cousin Schofield authored the Living Bible. My cousin Smith gave you the Mormon Bible. My family wrote the Bibles. I know what they're using you for. But I don't exist because I say the truth.
And that puts us right back to where we started. That's a good place to end because there's the blinders.
You see the date there, 10/20/11. That's Halloween.
Yeah. Well, she was in the hospital and then
Tennessee,
murdered
that
10
was
days
8
later.
days. Then they murdered her Halloween Eve. They slit her throat. And there's Admiral Byrd's kid right there at her bedside, leaving me a letter.
And nobody can see it despite all this overwhelming evidence. Blinders. You can't shock them out of the
No, you
trance
can't
for a
make-
second
if
to
they-
even
if
to
they
look
don't-
into it.
If they don't see it on CNN, Anderson
Right.
could-
So Fox News and CNN and all of them decide to cover something up, it doesn't exist because nobody cares because it wasn't on there. Doesn't matter whether they're left or right.
Who owns Fox News? Rupert Murdoch?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what was he doing? Every time we make a video, he copyrights it.
Yeah, he's trying to copyright your videos. It's unreal.
Yeah, if you and I make a video, he copyrights it in London.
Yeah.
And that's how they hide me. And I'm never allowed on Fox News, yet everybody on Fox News is somebody out of my life. Terry's daughter was Dana. You had Dana on Fox News for 15 years after they murdered Terry. Terry Heath.
Yeah.
Terry Heath, Sarah Heath Palin. Terry Heath created the Head Start program for Ronald Reagan. She's murdered after telling me 2 people are stalking her and two off-duty policemen kidnapped her in Wisconsin, drove her illegally across 5 state lines into Iowa. She escaped them. I put her on a Civil War ranch. They followed her there and murdered her.
What was the name of that?
I don't
what was the name of the Fox News? Not Fox News, but the Rupert Murdoch company. Storyful. There we go.
Yeah.
Came back to me.
No, they do whatever they want, and I never exist. They
Let's
murder
see if I
my
had a
family.
picture of it. Yeah, here we go.
They murder my family, steal my trademarks, my patents, all my money, destroy my income.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rupert Murdoch through these guys was putting
And
trademarks.
I'll make a video here in America with you, and they copyright it there in London.
Yeah.
And I never exist. And they give you your news.
Better, but
They give you your news. London gives you your history books in your colleges and in your high schools, and none of you know it. The Queen always come to New York, and then she'd end up in Hollywood, and she'd stay here half the year. She was publishing your college history books and your high school history books through the Bourne Publishing Company. Oh, that's Elvis Presley. And
Yeah.
all of you are too blind to see what's really going on.
right.
And then Greg, my family wrote the songs Elvis sang.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why you knew BB Bourne at ASCAP.
Yeah, I knew Elvis Presley's publisher. The Mills brothers are my uncles. The Mills brothers were filming Bush in the kindergarten class my girlfriend put him in on 9/11, and he says my name in a Freudian slip as the first plane hits the first tower.
Yeah, I was trying to. I have that video up on YouTube if anybody
And
wants
then
to go look at it.
a bunch of gays in Indiana, they murdered a policeman named Aaron Allen. And
Yeah,
they were supposed to put me on the 9/11 Truther site and videos, and they never did that.
but to market, they sure had uh, the NBC guy talking to Richard Hack about Howard Hughes and the Aviator as the planes hit the tower. They knew exactly what they were doing.
I know the whole Hughes family. I went to church with them.
Yeah,
And my family ran Ford's mansion, you know. I have the Hughes family blocked on Facebook because they helped steal my trademark. Not Howard Hughes, his kids, his grandchildren.
and that's why they wrapped him up there with 9/11 and tried to
So
include him
I
too.
blocked them all. Everybody back in Warren, Michigan and Centerline, where I was a teacher and they were nobodies, stole my life, my trademark, my money, raped and murdered my wives to hide what they did.
Yeah.
And the Howard Hughes family is part of that.
Yeah.
Howard Hughes, his grandchildren, they play guitars and sing, and they wanted to be in my band, and I wouldn't let them. And they stole it from me. Oh, I block them. I know who these people are. I just block them. Why would I leave people in my life that murdered my children and my wives?
Right.
I block them
And
all.
here they are being talked about right there on 9/11 on NBC as the tower, as the planes are hit on the tower. Yeah, it's unreal.
And they were blowing up my civil rights case. The field in Pennsylvania is where my wife was born and her father in Pennsylvania. And the Pentagon office they blew up had my civil rights case in it, and it was against the family that built the Pentagon, the Groves family. There's no lie in this. I still have all my copies, but they won't show it on the news because they want you to believe Muslims did it.
Right.
And Americans and Israel did it. I own Beebe Street. I'm Huey. I was a priest, and you have Beebe, Net, and Huey. A priest is a fisher of men. He uses a net. Beebe, Net, and Huey. I own Beebe Street in Warren, Michigan. You got the Warren report. And then after they murdered the last Kennedy, they gave you the Premier of Israel, Beebe, Net, and Huey. And he blew up the Twin Towers with Bush. There's no lie in this. They gave you Howard Stern. And now that's what I put up a post yesterday. Gary Stern, Howard Stern, Gary Stern, they're from Israel. They blew up the towers and they're hiding it and they're hiding me. And they run the news. They run the radio. They gave you Huey Lewis in the news and from France, Billy Squire from Germany. The communist Pope took my middle name, Francis, as they stole my trademark, $2 trillion in theft. Then they told you Muslims did it. The Stern family helped Bush do that. Whoopi Goldberg helped do that. Oprah helped do that. Oprah, Whoopi Goldberg, Howard Stern, everybody in Hollywood, Ed Asner, Alex Jones, Jesse Ventura, they stole my trademark. They stole my life and $2 trillion. All the way back in 1967.
I don't have a still shot of the Richard Hack scene there on 9/11, but or Richard.
It doesn't
I can't
matter.
remember his first name.
I'm gonna end this video. We said enough.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Put it up on YouTube. I'll send it to you. Put it on YouTube and post it on Facebook with the others. Nobody ever watches them. And
It's the blinders.
You should be viral, but you never are because they hide you.
Yeah, I know. This information should wake people up.
I've been on YouTube forever and I was played on the radio. I might have 70 people look at my videos from when I was being played on the radio. And I was the most popular band in Detroit and Chicago.
Yeah. And even those people don't wake up and listen to anything else but that. Right. It's unreal.
I don't exist. And it's because I don't show up in their algorithms online. People search.
Yeah,
I don't show up.
Yeah, they take that out too. Right.
They get Huey Lewis. They get Billy Squire. They get Pope Francis. And Hugh Francis Squire, the musician publisher from New York, I don't exist.
Despite an avalanche of evidence, nobody can just seem to
That was
snap
all
out of
done
it.
on purpose so they can filter me out of the algorithm. They stole
Well, yeah,
my,
but then occasionally a person runs into it and they don't snap out of it.
you know,
You know?
I would do searches on my own trademark before I met you. I'd put in Bottomline on and Hugh Squire on my trademark.
Yeah.
I would get 250 million hits, and none of them were me. And I'm Hugh
Wow.
Francis Squire, and I own the Bottomline trademark.
Yeah, I have a shot on here of just what happens when you hit Google. And yeah, there's tons of stuff on Bottom Line, but nothing about you.
No, nothing about me. They
Right,
filter me out of everything by stealing my name and my
right,
trademark.
right.
2,500 corporations with DuPont all stole my trademark and my name on the very same day.
Right.
There's no lie.
More evidence that the government's helping the corporations hide reality.
And then Howard Stern, as soon
They
as
work
the
together.
internet existed, you got Baldwin with Hulu. Disney was giving you Huey, baby Huey and Herbie the car, and that's my name. And then they gave you Huey Lewis and Billy Squire. So you put in Huey Squire, I don't exist.
Yeah.
You get everybody but me, and I'm the guy that created the trademark. I created the word, the trademark, and I own Bottomline Publishing on Broadway in New York via
Well, I sure hope somebody takes the blinders off and notices with this video, perhaps. Maybe this is the one that somebody pays
I
attention
doubt
to.
it. Look at how many I put up, Greg.
I know.
I
Well,
put
let's
up
stop it here,
hundreds
Hugh.
of I put up hundreds of videos and people don't even watch them, Greg, because
Right.
I don't show up.
I know. And you're
There's
not
my,
on the news.
I'm the Gardner family.
You're on the news every day. You're just not on the news in the official stories.
No, they use my name and my trademark
Right.
and everything, and I don't.
You're on it in 1,000 different ways. They just don't acknowledge it as the yeah. I know.
The presidents and the FBI and the CIA are behind this. The very family that kidnapped me and murdered
That's
my twin.
literally the only explanation.
The very family that runs the FBI kidnapped me at 4, murdered my twin, and they kidnapped us with Camille Sirhan. There's no lie in this. And they murdered, as they murdered JFK, they murdered my next door neighbors, the Duncan kids. Mr. Duncan was my friend my whole life. Everybody had a Duncan yo-yo. You know, it's unbelievable. They've hidden me for 70 years in all media.
Yeah.
And I'm Bill Gates. I'm his cousin. And my father-in-law gave him the software to make his computer at IBM as I married his stepdaughter. It's just unbelievable. I don't exist. And
yeah, it's not even worth looking into. Right.
There's the Gardner chalk drawing all the way from Scotland. My family's chalk drawing. I don't exist.
Right.
But Alex Jones does.
Right. Right.
Julian Assange, the pedophile from Norway, does. Greg Snowden, the porno star, exists in Russia, but I don't exist. And that's what they were using me and my twin for, porno movies. And
right.
Then they were trying to sell CIA illegal drugs through my farm. I bought from Trump's tax attorney, Mazar. And my whole life is like this, Greg, and you know it.
Yeah.
You got anything you want to add?
No, we'll stop it there.
I'm going to end it.
All right.